Hey guys, this is Leo from Big Time Super Friends, and I'm going to review Prometheus. Alright you guys, Prometheus is now a prequel in this quadrilogy of alien stories, and I like it. I like Prometheus. I think it answers the question of who created the xenomorphs, which we've gone past the xenomorphs and now wanting to know, hey, what is the origin of the xenomorphs? Where do they come from? Who made them? And what's the deal with these guys? Who these creators essentially? Now, we get a glimpse of these people in the first Alien movie when they're on the ship and they find essentially the engineers in the suit with that big gun thing. That is the first glimpse of the engineer, but there is no answers, just questions, okay? So Prometheus starts with characters Shaw and Charlie, and they're these scientists that are, they see these paintings and these with, I guess what you would call this map, and they find it in all these sites that they're doing archaeological work, if you will, until they sort of crack the code and they figure out where it's pointing to. So obviously enter Weyland-Yutani Corp. They're the golden ticket to get to this place, and this is essentially Prometheus. They land on planet LV-223, and they find another one of these ships that is introduced in the Alien movie. It's a little creepier when they show you the ship in Alien, but I think this movie sort of does return back to the fear and the horror factor and aspect of the Alien franchise as it's supposed to be. Now, they find the engineers, but at a cost. They essentially find a different version of the eggs from the first Alien movie, but it's still these cylinders that has this sort of liquid in it, and essentially once they land on this planet, they find these cylinders, and David, who is the android in this storyline, who is getting, I would say he's getting intel from, spoiler alert, Weyland himself, who's on the ship. But he's sort of bypassing everybody else and doing his own thing. And you see this right off the bat. The thing is that when they introduce you to David, he's learning other languages, and it looks like he's been studying the engineer's language, which we don't even know. It's not addressed as to how he finds out this language, but he knows how to power on the ship. He knows how to turn on the navigation map. He essentially knows to take one of these cylinders that is housing the life essence, if you will, that these engineers use. So David sort of propels the story in the sense that he's experimenting on these eggs that well, they're not eggs, but these cylinders that house this liquid that has life in it. The first time we see any sort of alien creature is when the fluid gets on these worms that are on the ground. Now, how are these worms there? Why are they there? Because this ship seems to be devoid of life, except for these worms. Now, these worms eventually turn into these, what I would call the facehugger cobras. Come here.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Hey, baby.
Now, I think part of the problem with this movie is the fact that people are expecting a full-blown xenomorph and more of an alien presence, but there really is not an alien presence. It's just more of David sort of doing his own thing. He kind of goes rogue, and he's sort of pushing you off the cliff to see what happens when you fall. Oh, does he die or does he survive? I think the cast of characters is sort of forgettable, with the exception of obviously Shaw and David. Now, these two are the more prominent characters. They take sort of center stage, but there is a supporting cast that I personally enjoy watching. Obviously, Charlize Theron is a cool character, which there's a question of, is she an android or not? The captain of the ship, Idris Elba, I love his character. He essentially sacrifices himself so he can, so the xenomorph doesn't escape, but he does give it to Charlize Theron. You know what I'm saying? He does give it to her, so that's a plus.
My room. 10 minutes.
Love the word you with.
I love Fassbender's portrayal of David. He definitely steals the movie for me. I love when he's riding around on the bicycle on the ship, but when everyone's still in cryo sleep and he shoots the basket and it's like nothing but net, and he's watching Lawrence of Arabia, one of my personal favorite movies, and he memorizes a line where Lawrence talks about the desert and how it's just this vast empty thing, and there in the desert there's nothing and no man wants nothing, and you see that this resonates with David, but why? Like, why does he care so much about that movie? And so I think it speaks volumes about his character. He doesn't mind being alone. Clearly, he's alone when we were introduced to him. So the negatives in this movie are, again, I think for some people, the fact that there is no xenomorph in this movie, which I don't mind, but some people, I guess, don't really care for that. Another thing is the fact that the engineers there's no answer. We don't get an answer to who the engineers are other than they are vastly superior to us and they can do whatever they please with us if they really don't like us, which that's what they do with Wayland. They kill him off. And I think it's it pays off sort of because so many people have suffered because of Wayland, and clearly Wayland dies way before Ripley comes onto the scene, but it's sort of like a fuck that guy. Yes, he gets what he deserves because he's sacrificed a lot of lives to satisfy his own motives for all these explorations. So guys, I think one of the coolest things about this movie is actually the ending, which the denouement of the movie, which is Shaw takes out the alien that's inside her body, and that eventually grows up to be a giant face hugger, which impregnates the engineer, and because of that we get to see our first xenomorph, which is not really like a xenomorph. This one's all white, which I think is interesting because this is our first introduction to I would call it the primordial, the original, the OG alien, okay? And it doesn't really have the second mouth that comes out. It has more of like a great white's jaws extending out, and that's sort of like the beginning of that, if you will. And I would like to think of that as the first queen, because obviously where would the eggs come from? But this is, I think it pays off. That's if you don't like the fact that there's no xenomorphs in this movie, when you see this scene, because it's the last scene, I think it's amazing. It pays off. Another thing I enjoy about this movie is the fact that Shaw survives this whole endeavor, and she takes off with David on their ship, which we see in the first Alien movie. But in this one, she takes off on the ship, actually, and she goes to hopefully get the answer she's looking for. And I think it leaves, when the movie ends, it just leaves you with these questions like, what did she do? Did she survive? Did she get to her objective? Did David help her, or did he try to make her fail in her attempts to get to wherever she's going? There's just a lot of questions that sort of, it's like a cliffhanger, and I really like that about this movie. A lot of movies don't do that anymore, and this definitely did that for me. It does that. I'm sure I wasn't the only one who got that feeling, but for me, it's sort of like a payoff, and definitely once the movie ended, I realized, God, I can't wait to see the next installment and what it answers and where it takes us. And obviously, we're going to find out pretty soon here what happened to Shaw and David.
So, your rating and then the outro.
Alright, guys. Let me know what you think of this movie. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you miss the xenomorphs? Like, share, and subscribe, please. Let me know in the comments below what you think. And don't forget, guys, I've reviewed Aliens 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I will be reviewing Alien Covenant. So keep an eye out for that. And I'll see you guys in the future.